Hello Fit Friends, I am the Baking Mad Gym Addict and I'm going to show you how I food prep. In this video I make 15 meals in under 2.5 hours. These consist of 4 boxes of barramundi, cauliflower rice and green veggies, and 11 boxes of chicken, sweet potatoes, quinoa and green veggies. For those that are not familiar with food prepping, all this means is that I buy a huge amount of food at the weekend, cook it all in one go, package them all into individual portions and freeze them until it's time to eat. It's just like having my own personal range of microwavable clean eating meals. By preparing the meals in advance, I am more likely to eat cleaner and be less tempted with bad food choices. Before food prepping, I usually preheat the oven to around 180 degrees or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I boil the water in the kettle and line 2 large baking trays and 1 small baking tray with tin foil. Covering the trays in tin foil makes the cleaning process much more easier at the end. And now we start with the food. I start with the food item that takes the longest to cook. In today's case, it is the chicken, so I start with taking the poultry out of its packaging and give it a good clean. I then put the chicken breast side down because I find this method makes the chicken breast less dry. To ensure the chicken breast gets as much moisture as possible, I add some hot water to the tray before putting the chickens in the preheated oven. It depends on the size of your chicken, but usually my chickens take about an hour and a half to cook. When you pierce the fattest part of the chicken and the juices run clear, that's when you know it's ready. My preference is to buy 2 whole chickens and roast them together rather than buying chicken breasts. Using a whole chicken makes food prepping much more economical. However, you will have to get your hands dirty after the chicken is cooked because you will have to carve the chicken meat from the bone. Lucky I don't mind this process at all. While the chickens are cooking in the oven, I start prepping the fish. Today I am using barramundi fillets. You can use any fish you like. Generally, salmon fillets, fresh tuna fillets and tilapia fillets are quite popular. I keep it simple by seasoning the fish with truffle flavoured olive oil, salt, pepper and some lime juice. Once the fish is prepped, I put that in the oven too. Usually the fish takes around 15 to 20 minutes to cook. Whilst the fish and chicken are cooking away in the oven, I use my muscle power to peel and wash the sweet potatoes. Once they're clean, I chop them up and put about 3/4 of them in a baking tray and the other quarter around the chicken which is still cooking. My husband thinks the sweet potatoes which are cooked with the chicken always tastes the best. I give the potatoes a quick spray with olive oil and then put them in the oven. So now I have 3 levels of food cooking happening in my oven. I have the sweet potato, the chicken and the barramundi fillets. As part of my food prep, I usually make hard-boiled eggs which make a quick and tasty protein snack if ever I get the munchies during the week. A good tip to tell the difference between your raw eggs and your cooked eggs is to draw silly faces on the ones that are hard-boiled. A new thing I've started making is cauliflower rice. This can be tasty in a cauliflower fried rice recipe, but my favourite thing to do at the moment is to make a cauliflower pizza crust. You can find a recipe for this on my website and Facebook page. I start with breaking off the cauliflower florets and putting them into a bowl. To make the cauliflower into rice-like particles, all you have to do is pulse them a few times in a food processor. I don't have a food processor, so I'm using my blender, which is slightly tedious because you can only pulse a few small portions at a time, but it still gets the job done. So once the cauliflower rice is done, usually the fish and the boiled eggs are ready. So I take my barramundi out of the oven and the eggs out of the water and leave them aside to cool. Next, I move on to washing and chopping the ends off my asparagus and broccolini. I then cut them down into smaller pieces and then leave them blanching in a pot of hot boiling water for about 5 to 10 minutes. After the green veggies are briefly cooked, just strain the hot water away and leave it aside to cool down. If you want to preserve the texture of the green veggies, you may want to fully immerse them in cold water after blanching, but I don't really bother with this. Next, we move on to quinoa. I put 1 cup in a pot and rinse it really well. It's always important to rinse quinoa thoroughly because the seeds are coated with saponins, which can sometimes cause a bitter taste. Usually I put 1 cup of quinoa to 2 cups of water. The pot then sits on a medium heat for about 15 minutes. Once the water is all absorbed, I just leave the quinoa for 15 more minutes in a pot with a lid on top. Next, I wash and chop up the zucchini into thick strips which will go into the oven for about 25 minutes. I also make zucchini linguine, which will be blanched in hot water for about 5 minutes. Next on the agenda, I chop up some spring onions and keep them in the fridge in a Tupperware box so that I can use them during the week to flavour dishes such as omelette. I move on to making cauliflower rice by drizzling olive oil into a hot pot before adding 2 whisked eggs. Once the eggs are nearly set, I mix in a teaspoon of garlic paste and some cauliflower rice and stir fry it for about 8 minutes. To finish off the rice, I add in 2 handfuls of spring onions, salt, pepper and a dash of light soy sauce. I then load up 4 boxes with cauliflower rice, barramundi fillets and green veggies. By now the chicken is likely to be ready, and so I remove it from the oven, drain out the water and leave it to cool. Now comes the fun bit. I firstly remove the skin from the cooked chicken and then cut open the chicken to make it cool quicker. Once it's cooled down, I tear chunks of chicken meat from the bone. Once I've pulled off the meat from the chicken, I dice it up. Now it's just a matter of loading up your 11 boxes with sweet potato, quinoa, chicken and green veggies. Once the food inside the Tupperware boxes have cooled down, I store about 3 days worth of boxes in the fridge. The rest of the boxes all go into the freezer. When we start running out of boxes in the fridge, we take a couple of boxes out of the freezer and transfer them into the fridge to defrost. My husband and I both work in an office, and so these boxes are what we eat during lunchtimes. It usually takes about 2 to 3 minutes in the microwave to reheat, and it saves us time because we never have to think about what to have for lunch that day. It also saves money because we're taking our own lunches to work. If you're feeling particularly enthusiastic, you could prep your green smoothies for the week too. Here I put 60 grams of kale leaves, 12 grapes and a small sliced banana into freezer bags. This means that during the week, if I need a smoothie, I just grab one of these little bags out of the freezer, throw in some milk and the smoothie is ready in under a minute. If you have any questions on food prepping, feel free to post them on my Facebook page, The Baking Mad Gym Addict. Have a wonderful day and keep eating clean.